What is going on, NPL fans? My name is NoPunIntended, and today I'm here to bring you the power rankings for Week 8 of Season 4 of the NPL Minors. And I've learned that trying to do that intro with a name that has more than one syllable is a very, very bad idea. Just ruins the cadence. But if you guys enjoy these power rankings, please make sure to leave a like on the video and comment on your thoughts on these 16 teams that are in the minors. Unfortunately, Richard's a bit busy this week and couldn't find the time to record with me, but we already missed Week 7. It would be quite sacrilegious to miss 2 weeks in a row. He did leave me a few notes about the state of the league at this point. A couple things I do want to note before we get into the actual rankings. The Minors doc will be updated for Week 7 and Week 8 power rankings, hopefully by the time this video comes out. If they don't, feel free to yell at me in the comments of this video, and I'll try to remind the people in charge of the doc. Also, no teams were mathematically eliminated from playoff contention in Week 7, but it was still a very crucial week, and as of the end of Week 8, we do see our first team being eliminated from contention for the playoffs. 15 teams are still alive, although a handful of them are likely to be eliminated after Week 9 slate of games. In addition to that, 2 teams will actually be ineligible for promotion due to having joined it too late in the season. Although the Angels of Bahia and the Carolina Pantherians could very well make a playoff run, right now there is no way for them to have any chance of getting promoted. Technically speaking, although the Toronto Lux Rays joined at the same time as the Carolina Pantherians, they can still make up a game that was not played earlier in the season, so they can fulfill the 70% requirement that is necessary to be eligible for a promotion. But with that being said, let's get into the power rankings. I'm ordering these based on average ranking, as Richard has been so kind to provide me with his rankings, although I don't really have any explanations, so I'm just going to give my explanations and his rankings as best I can. But starting things off, my last place team is the Vancouver Stealth Rocks. Richard has them at number 15. Apparently, Turbo and Carney played a game of Pokemon Draft League for Week 8. Turbo won it 3-0, and it was never heard from again. Ooh, spooky. Fitting for the first week of October. Moving on, Richard's number 16, my number 15 team is the Rotterdam Staraptors. From the little bit I could gather from this game, I think Freeze's strategy was a bit passive, with Blastoise and Gliscor as key defensive checks that he used. So Falp's strategy of using Hazard Stack, again, really put pressure on the Blastoise to get off the Rapid Spin, and that gave Falp opportunities to wear away at Rotterdam's core. He also made a nice play predicting Mamoswine to come in on Tyranitar and going for Superpower instead, and those are the kind of plays he needs to make, but unfortunately he needs way too many of them to overcome the fact that his team isn't as good as other ones in the league. Still, from what it sounds, a much better performance from him than in previous games, but other teams just have better win-loss records. But moving on, Richard's number 14 team, my number 13 team, is the Bullet Punch Club. Uzi said in his commentary he didn't play the best in this game, and I would argue that he didn't prep very well either. He wasn't aware of Alolan Persian being able to force out Mega Diancie with Parting Shot, he let Jirachi get paralyzed by Nihilego, he sacked that Diancie just to get some chip damage off on the Skarmory, he allowed his Rotom to get worn down rather quickly, but none of that really matters when you get swept by Mew, and you can't really blame him for that, because Mew is pretty darn unpredictable. Uzi's team did have a bunch of frail Mons that weren't overwhelmingly fast, and because of that, Mew was able to pick up a 5-Mon sweep, which pretty much ended Uzi's playoff hopes. He just had too much of a deficit in the early season to overcome. He's way too far behind at this point, and non-playoff teams will find themselves below playoff teams in these power rankings. Then we move to the Colorado Avalugs. I have them at 14, Richard has them at 12. Keegan won through hacks yet again, although poor Shuckle had to receive the brunt of the sacrificial punishment to do it, getting critted twice and flinched once by Excadrill's Ironhead, and being unable to put up rocks and webs as a result. But Keegan brought the game back by actually using Dhelmise correctly as an offensive breaker. It whacked Clefable over the head with a crit anchor shot. I think Keegan used Mandibuzz incredibly well as a Scalpy check to stop the sweep, although if Tone's Latios had not missed Draco Meteor, the result could have gone the other way, but without the replay it is very difficult to tell. The Avalugs did have some flashes of brilliance this week, and hey, sometimes they don't have those in the battle, so good on Keegan for that. But we're going to move on to the Los Angeles Clefable. I ranked them at number 11, Richard has them at 13. You know, Greg, you said you were going next level. I think that entire game was next level. Greg lost because he squandered a 4-3 lead by completely forgetting which Mons Techno had left. He let his setup Gyarados die to a Stone Edge from Hitmontop, which is about as embarrassing as it gets. I mean, the only Mon that could potentially kill something that would be more embarrassing would be Chansey. I also generally worry that Greg doesn't have great momentum options, which would serve well for bringing him his really slow wall breakers that I like Escavalier and Conkeldurr. By the way, Assault Vest Escavalier would have been a much better switch into Cresselia, because it doesn't even take half from HP Fire. Don't tell anyone I told you this. Now, you may be asking why I sound so salty about Greg and his battle this week. Well, Greg had the audacity to state that Breakneck Blitzen was his favorite analyst show, not NPL Minors Power Rankings. Okay, you know what, Greg? You just earned yourself a write-up for that one. I mean, I'm sorry, it's just unbelievable. But moving on to my number 12 team, Richard's number 11 team, the Phoenix Midnights. Today I learned that the IV on the end of Turbo's YouTube username is actually pronounced 4. Good stuff. But moving on, both Richard and I have the main red Clawitzers at the number 10 spot. So without the replay, it's tough to determine what happened, but it seems like the game between Tone and Keegan was haxy, which is befitting of both Maine and Colorado this season. Keegan is one of the few good stops to Scolipede and Mandibuzz, which blocked off the potential sweep path for Tone. It is unfortunate he missed Draco Meteor with Latios on the Mandibuzz, could have made a difference in the result, but it's par for the course for the red Clawitzers this season. Bad luck and slight oversights. I've had Tone pretty high throughout the season, but eventually I can't keep making excuses for why he's losing. There has to be something wrong. I don't know what it is, but there has to be something wrong for him to be 3-5. Eventually, something's got to get right. I mean, he can't possibly have 5 losses due to just luck or misfortune, can he? And this is about the point where Richard and I sort of differ on a lot of these rankings. Every single team has a ranking above average, that is to say at least an 8.5. Starting off with my number 9 team, Richard's number 6 team, we have the Carolina Pantherians. Techno brought Toxic Spikes, and it seems like every time someone brings some form of Hazard Stack in NPL Minor Season 4, they win. Even though Greg had Guts Conkeldurr, Techno knew he had one of the best fighting switch-ins around in Corsellia to survive attacks, so he could afford to whittle down Greg's potential defensive Pokemon. Even though it was practically a 6-5 game because he was so willing to let go of Weezing, the Toxic Spikes let him play more to his style. He also made it so that his defensive mons could actually kill the offensive mons Greg was inclined to check them with. Examples of that include putting Stone Edge on Hitmontop for Gyarados, and Hidden Power Fire on Corsellia for Escavalier. Although, technically speaking, Escavalier shouldn't take very much damage if it runs the Assault Vest. Trust me, I would know. I've had that situation before, but I appreciate the thought. He's not higher because Aster, whose team he took over, actually had a better record in 4 games than Techno does in his 4 games. And I'm still worried about potential sweepers, because if Greg hadn't played so strangely with Gyarados around Hitmontop, the game could have gone a bit differently, but Techno still won, and winning is all that matters in this league. But now moving on, with the same average ranking as Techno with a 7.5, we have the Oklahoma City Thunderous. I put them at number 8, Richard had them at number 7. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. With an offensive team, you run the gambit of all possible results. You get dominant wins, you get blowout losses, you get those strange 2-on-2 endgames that really go down to the wire. Mio's dealt with it all this season. And this is about as low as it gets for him, getting swept by a rock-polished Donphan. Now, anyone who's faced this set remembers exactly when and where they were the night they got swept. Again, his ground switch-ins aren't the best. That's what happens when your bulky grass or bug type is also a steal, in the case of Ferrothorn. I still like him in this spot as a playoff team, because his last 2 opponents are Keegan and Carney, but he is going to have to secure those wins in order to make it to playoffs. Going on to my number 6 team, Richard's number 8 team, we have Rose Radenborg. So if we had done a Week 7 video, I would have mentioned that Dan is good, but his level of competition prevented me from moving much higher than the middle of the pack. Well, he just beat my previous number 1 team, so that's no longer an issue. One thing I will point out was that he packed a very thoughtful Kyurem Black set. Ethan had a lot of trouble with ice ground coverage, and packing Hidden Power Fire on Kyurem in case of Magnet Rise Klefki was very, very smart. His team is super strong, the Mons have great offensive capabilities, and against Ethan's more defensive, tight matchup-oriented team, he just laid waste to it with Kyurem Black and Celesteela. Air Slash hacks on the part of both Ethan and himself cost Dan some differential points, but this was still a huge win he desperately needed. He's not any higher because in the early season he was quite inconsistent, but I think it's safe to say that Rose Radenborg is not falling back to position 11 this season. But now we're going to move on to the team that Richard and I most heavily disagree on this week. I put the Toronto Luxrays as my number 4 team. Richard doesn't even have them in the top half of his rankings. He put them at 9. So first off, Turk, you have the worst jump cuts ever. Like, damn that intro. Beyond that, I like Turk's team building capabilities, just enough to where he gets close wins a lot. But that's fine if you can keep doing it. He didn't give Ace a single opportunity to get a setup move off. His offense was just that potent. He used types like Fire, Water, and Flying in his offensive core this week that have very few switch-ins, and he backs them up well with the flexibility of Silvally and the well-balanced nature of Latias. I'm sure I said something that resembled actual English there. He keeps his games very close, and he never really gets caught that off guard by anything, and that's a methodology I think will serve him well in the long run. Another team that Richard and I put in quite different positions are the Anaheim Altarias. I have them at 7, Richard has them at number 3. I think Ace lost this game by having his Metagross severely weakened by Mega Pinsir's knockoff. In general, Gross was easily his most dependable flying switch-in, so for Turk's flying type to cripple Ace's flying check, that was the big difference in the game. Aside from that, he just couldn't kill anything. I find that heavy offense teams usually have good matchups against teams with very balanced mons that don't have the best base stats, but they can use a lot of utility options. However, these heavy offense teams can't handle teams that have mons with very specific roles that they can pull off extremely well. Stuff like Mega Pinsir, which is one of the best attackers in the format, and Tapu Fini, which just weathers hit after hit after hit. I also found the choice to bring Sneasel interesting. I mean, unless you're using it strictly to pursuit trap Latias, but he also has Crocodile for that, so I don't know. But the matchup was awful for him here, and I don't blame him for losing this game specifically. But the next team we're going to talk about is the Dewford Drapions. I put them at number 5, Richard has them at 4. Falp's decision to pressure Rotterdam with Qwilfish's Toxic Spikes made Freeze's already shaky switch-ins even more shaky. I love how he operated with Slowbro. It's so bulky that even super effective hits don't cripple it too badly because of its regenerator ability. He also carried Iron Tail on it for Mega Gardevoir, which I like a lot. His offense took advantage of their potential, he got around Freeze's offense rather easily, and always had something in the back to revenge. He's meticulous in considering all possible options, rarely overlooks a possibility, and losing Mons is always off of some kind of sack or making a different decision on a 50-50. Falp always has a very solid game plan. He played strictly for the win, and he didn't try to force anything he didn't need to. But next up is the Tennessee Tynamos, who I had in 3rd and Richard had in 5th. Ethan had quite a few issues dealing with setup mons. Dan's Swords Dance Mimikyu and Autotomy Celesteela had Tennessee beat at team matchup. Ethan is so reliant on type switch-ins, and it works if your opponent's mons can't get the right types of moves to cover the spectrum, but Rose Radenborg had little trouble with that. He had Moldbreaker to pop Rotom Wash with Earth Power, and that made it so that Ice Ground coverage was very hard for Ethan to counter, even with Magnet Rise Klefki. His momentum has slowed with 2 straight losses, but I still haven't forgotten about his performance in weeks 3 through 6, which were very strong games for Ethan, and that's why he remains in my top 3. However, Richard and I do agree on our top 2. At number 2, we've put down the Angels of Bahiaim. The question that comes up when preparing for an offensive team like Mio's is, do you have something that can outspeed and kill everything? If you do, it makes the matchup a lot easier, and Juice had some really good set design by using Rock Polish Donphan, and knowing that if he could weaken Ferrothorn and Zygarde 50, he would get the victory. A perfect strategy and perfect execution. It's tough to get a complete idea of the game without a replay available, but he was able to figure out Mio's tendencies from somewhere, and exploit the 4x weaknesses on Mio's bulky mons. And Youst is actually still trying, even though he has no chance of getting promoted this season. Sorry to be such a buzzkill, but I do appreciate the work you put in week to week. And finally, the number 1 team for both Richard and myself is the Houston Soul Rockets. And that makes it official, the worst to first dream is real. So in this game, Adam made some really nice plays knowing Uzi's team construction. He played expertly with Nihilego. He set up rocks early, and the Bullet Punch Club had very few forms of recovery, so they were able to wear the team down. He was then able to paralyze Jirachi with Nihilego, which completely caught Uzi off guard. I loved his choice to bring a low 1 Persian. It outsped all non-Scarfers Uzi had, and forced out Mega Diancie with Parting Shot, which was a pretty cool strategy to see. He did let Suicune get Trick Scarfed, which was the strategy that did him in week 1, but that also prevented his Mew from having to take on the Scarf. He then saw he could bring in Mew on Terrakion and sweep it with the Rock Polish Nasty Plot set. A stupid good strategy, and his team is really coming together. It is so flexible right now, and he's won 5 of his last 6 games, and the 6th was only a 1-0 loss on a 50-50. It's amazing how Adam has turned the season around. He looks nothing like he did in weeks 1 and 2, and he definitely deserves the top spot in the power rankings. But that is going to do it for week 8. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the NPL channel if you haven't done so already. Also, if you happen to disagree with me on any of my rankings for one of these teams, please leave a comment below, and I will do my best to respond to it as soon as I can. Also, leave a comment if you would like Richard to come back next week, because I know I would. Make sure to check out the channels of all of our coaches and analysts in the description. They're all lovely, lovely people, and I know they'd be very grateful if you did so. But until I see you next time, take care.